Welcome to Trauma, Healing, and the Child's Mind series. This journey was born from a powerful personal revelation, a mother's call to transform pain into purpose. We sincerely believe that even from the deepest wounds, wisdom can emerge through focused learning and nurturing. Our expert team brings unique insights and powerful tools to help you shift your perspective and truly begin your healing journey. At Driven Livin', we're here to support you with resources like the Drive Collective, self-improvement courses, guided meditations, and journaling. If any part of this conversation triggers you, please find immediate professional resources listed in our description. This is our shared path to evolving our paths into wisdom together. I hope you enjoy the series. Healing the Delusion of Separation, Spiritual Alchemy for Trauma Recovery with Xochi Vasquez. Trauma can create a deep sense of separation, but healing is possible. Xochi Heather Vasquez, a mystic and teacher with 20 years in spiritual transformational arts, guides us through spiritual alchemy rooted in unconditional love. We'll explore how trauma leads to separation from self and others, identify hidden wounds that block authenticity, create a path to integrate fragmented aspects of self, and find freedom, love, joy, and wholeness. Discover how Xochi's approach helps heal trauma and rediscover inner peace. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show, where you're about to go on a wellness-driven ride. Welcome to the show. Let me share a little bit about the guests that we have here today for this series. Xochi Heather Vasquez is a mystic and teacher with 20 years of experience in the spiritual transformational arts. She has developed an in-depth path to spiritual alchemy rooted in the consciousness of unconditional love to help individuals heal from the deepest delusion of separation. She guides people in identifying and integrating the unseen wounds and fragmented aspects of self that trauma can create. I am so pleased to help welcome to our stage today, Xochi. Welcome.
Hi, yeah, I'm happy to be here. I'm pretty excited to be able to share this information, with you, with the people that listen to your show. And I did take a look at everything that you do, and it's really fabulous. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, I am so honored to have you here as well with all of the things that you bring to the surface when it comes to healing. And ultimately, that's all what we strive to do when we have life's hits and blows and trauma. So this is an exciting opportunity for you to be here to share these things with us. And I noticed in the beginning, we talked about your name and I said it incorrectly. So I want to make sure that everyone knows who you are. So if you could say your name more eloquently than I, please do
You actually,
so.
you actually got it right the second time. So it's a Xochi Heather Vasquez.
Perfect. Yes, you say it much better than I. Well, again, Xochi, welcome to the show. Let's get started by sharing a little bit more about yourself so the audience can get to know you more.
Sure. Let's see. Just since I was a itty bitty, I was extremely intuitive, to say the least. I was always very energetically, in sync with everything that was happening around me. So I could was very empathic. I could very much feel, what was going on for everybody else in the room. And as I got older, those skills got a little bit more potent, where I could be talking to somebody and see that they had a trauma when they were 6, or maybe when they were 12, or that their parents died in a car accident when they were 23, or whatever it was. And, so growing up like that was a tad bit overwhelming, to say the least. And, I had my own trials and tribulations in my life. And around 25, I made some huge shifts in my life and decided to really start to hone in on why I was given those gifts and what it was that I was supposed to actually do with them. And so I really started calling in teachers and mentors and guides. And, Spirit really led me from one teacher to another. And that's when I really started to really dive into my spiritual journey. And then as I got married and had children, both my children ended up being vaccine injured and developed severe autism. And that, I would say, was the catalyst for me to really take hold of my gifts and to really start to materialize them into something that not only I could use, but I could teach other people to use. Because my inspiration was I was learning that that was happening to so many other parents. And so many people had so many children with all these different ailments that sometimes modern medicine or the Western approach wasn't necessarily helping them heal. And so both my children's trajectory was for them to be severely autistic and to be in special day classes for the rest of their life. And they are both 16 and 18 and fully functioning humans. My daughter is in a Black/, leadership Kung Fu program, and she's 16 years old and gets straight A's and has desires to go to college. And my son's an amazing musician, and he's 18 and he's about to graduate from high school. And they're they're a miracle after miracle after miracle. And so that's really how I started to really hone in my gifts and start my business and starting to share it with everybody else.
Oh, that's really beautiful. And I'm so pleased to hear that for you and your children. And it is this example of hope that so many of us really need to see, because we do have, these things pop up. I'm curious to know, Xochi, because you were able to understand and feel into intuitively people's traumas, did it ever make it easier for you when you experienced your own life's traumas?
Um, no, because because not only was I feeling my own traumas, I was actually attempting to process everybody else's traumas around me, which is a path that a lot of healers go through. It's, referred to as the path of the wounded healer. So instead of
Mm,
teaching others how to alchemize their own energy, or to be a guardian, or to be a conduit, or to be the person that's creating a conducive environment so people can learn to heal themselves, we end up actually trying to heal everybody else's traumas for them, which might seem like a beautiful gift, but what it really does is it bogs down the healer, because now they are trying to transmute, hundreds of people's journeys, which is practically impossible. And then we're also kind of atrophy the community. We're not teaching them how to strengthen their intuition. We're not teaching them that they have those same intuitive healing powers within inside of themselves. Um, I believe that every human being is capable of connecting to their intuition, owning authority of their own energy, being able to tune into these, unseen aspects of ourselves that are in the background, sort of ruling our decisions and our responses and reactions to things. I'm not the only person that can do this. I was born with those gifts more readily available, but every single human has the same blueprint. So we're all just as empowered to tap into these intuitive gifts within inside of ourselves and learn to use them for ourselves and others if we want to.
I agree with you entirely and wholeheartedly. And it's when we start going within and start quieting down everything and listening to our bodies and to ourselves and being able to access that higher self. And it takes practice, just like you wanted to seek out teachers and people who could show you how to really heighten those gifts that we all really have. And just some of us are maybe more connected than others, and especially children. And I think that oftentimes we have these gifts as children, and then life starts happening, right? And the light within us starts to dwindle just a little bit. And we can get back to it. And I think that that's a very empowering message, that we all can get back to our higher selves, our true selves, that inner light that um, really is how we inspire ourselves and the rest of the world. Now, I want to go back a little bit as well, because you talked about that wounded healer, the pieces of us. I think that so many of us, when we've experienced life traumas, but we also want to be the healer for the rest of the world, we put ourselves on the back burner. And many of us want to really just help others and be able to be the light for them and show them the way, but it doesn't serve us. So, can you share a little bit about when you realized that that was something that you needed to be able to go within and start working on yourself?
Well, I had started that spiritual journey around 25 and was doing a lot of inside work on myself and inventory work and, looking at core belief systems and what belief systems were ruling my life. And so I had that prior to having my children. And then, when you have children, we have such an interesting mother archetype, in this country, where, it's just this pure sacrifice and super moms and the house being perfect and the Pinterest parties and all the things. So it was really when I took the time to really analyze my own belief systems around, what kind of a mother that I wanted to be, and looking at like, I cannot really be the fullest version of myself for my children if I'm not feeding myself. If I'm completely depleted and I'm exhausted and I can't think straight and I'm not nourishing myself and I'm not getting enough rest, like how can I possibly show up for these kiddos? So when my children, both they developed severe symptoms within a few months of each other because they're less than 2 years apart. And, I'd say that I went to this program called the Autism Treatment Center of America, and their basis of their training of working with special needs children was to meet them in the frequency of unconditional love. And when we went there, the first 3 days was all about the parents. We didn't even talk about our kids. It was like, what's going on for you? What do you need to heal
Mm.
in yourself? How are you doing in response to your children? Right? Because if I'm so stressed out and full of fear, and then I go to try to heal my kids, what am I going to transmute to them? A bunch of fear. So, that's when I was like really realized like how incredibly important it was for me to put myself first. And then that journey with being a healer, that took me many years to break because it's ancestral, it's generational. We've done it for thousands of years. Those of us who have a larger healer archetype, we've been healers in past lives, and we come in with this imprint, in that self-sacrifice. And so really, I think I learned that more from my spirit guides, I'd have to say, than my teachers, because a lot of my teachers were actually really stuck in that. And I think watching them be older and how much the physical elements and things that they were suffering, it was like, oh, like I don't want that. Like I want to flourish. I want to be healthy. I want to be bright. I want my light to be really big. And it was really meditating and channeling Mother Mary, actually, who came to me and gave me a new definition of compassion. She said, you don't have to always empathize with somebody else to have compassion. Compassion can be simply witnessing somebody without judgment and then asking spirit, is it in divine order for me to be of service to this person? Because maybe it's not. Maybe if I try to input myself in that situation, I'm actually getting in the way of the person who's more aligned to help this person. And then to ask, how can I help them in a way that feels mutually beneficial? How can I show up in a capacity that doesn't cross my boundaries or drain me, but is also helpful and beneficial to the other person? So that became my new motto. That became my new way of going about how I was helping people. And I do empath a lot of things during my sessions because I work more shamanistic by nature. So if I look at you, I'm going to start to embody what's going on in your physical self and go, okay, you have a pain in your shoulder, you've got some tightness in your heart chakra, there's something going on with your root chakra. But I've been trained to how to feel that and then push it right back out. But let's say I'm having a day where I have my own stuff going on. I will go into the lens of I'm going to witness you without judgment. I can see you through the eyes of spirit. And spirit doesn't judge anything
Mm.
that we do. There's no reward punishment here. Spirit loves us no matter what we do. We came down here to have this full human experience from the light of the light to the darkest of the dark. Clearly, look at our reality. And so when you can witness somebody with that, that actually does more for them than empathizing with them. Because,
Mm.
yeah, you may understand and you may feel the way they feel. But if you can't witness them in a space that's conducive for their body and their mind and their soul and their hearts to feel, and the inner child to feel safe enough to explore the trauma, they can't heal. So you don't necessarily need to empathize with people to be a healer.
Ah, I love everything that you just said, and really being able to have a completely different perspective. And what happens when we also view ourselves that way? How
Absolutely.
powerful is that? Where we
That's
can
the
look
most powerful.
exactly. So, what an incredible conversation! I knew that I was going to love the conversation with you and all of the insight that you brought. Uh, Xochi, we're going to move into our commercial, and when we get back, we're going to move into the spiritual alchemy aspects of the delusion of separation, because that key too is something that if once we know and we have a different perspective of it, invites us into profound healing. So stay tuned. Are you ready to take control of your ride to wellness? Rev up with Driven Living. Visit www.drivenliving.com and buckle up for a journey. Get exclusive access to our Wellness Driven Life Show guest portal, where you can dive deep into the minds of our esteemed guests. Sign up for our newsletter and get insider scoops on these distinguished personalities. It's like having a backstage pass to their life-changing wisdom. But that's not all. You'll also receive a free hug. You heard me right, a free hug. An enlightening ebook from the Driven Living team. Discover the science-backed benefits of hugging yourself. It's a fill-up for your wellness tank. Because at Driven Living, we believe in fueling your journey to wellness, both physically and psychologically. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.drivenliving.com today. Welcome back, everyone. Here with Xochi Vasquez. Did I say it right?
Yes.
And her incredible insights on really tapping in to the inner self, to our spiritual selves, and being able to heal us and those around us when we've had life, when we've been living life, because that's what it is. And then how do we navigate this incredible experience that we all get to have and share in? And so when we start talking about this spiritual side of ourselves and this huge delusion that we all face coming into this physical form of separation, can you share a little bit about what that means for all of us, Xochi?
Yeah, I mean, so if you look at, from a higher perspective, we're all one. We all come from the same creator. I always explain it to clients if spirit is just this big ball of light that's just holds this frequency of unconditional love, and we're just all these little droplets of that light that come in and incarnate and manifest into the individual, people that we are in this time and space. So it's always such an interesting let's say like paradox in the sense that like we're all one, but we're all walking around in these separate three-dimensional bodies, right? It's a little bit, it's sometimes a harder concept to kind of like blend together. But that feeling of separateness often does come from earlyhood traumas, and it can even come from pre-verbal traumas. It can come from trauma in the womb. It can come from trauma that we pulled in from a past life. And what those traumas are and why they're traumas, it's not because we went through the experience. Like, yes, we may have went through experiences that are, really hard and really terrible and maybe even violating. And I've had plenty of mine. I did not have an easy experience by any means. I've suffered a ton of trauma. And but the real issue is not people not having a place to process and be present with the experience that they just went through. Like that was why
Yeah.
it becomes trauma. That's why it gets stuck because something happens to us. We have no idea what to do with it. So we disassociate or we set it aside, or that part of us literally left our body while the trauma was happening. And now it is just stuck over here and it
Mm.
can't come back. So therefore, the
Yeah.
oneness within inside of ourselves is all cut apart. And we've stored all these little pieces and compartmentalized them wherever we've needed to be able to survive. And then we create all these
Yeah.
belief systems and emotions and responses and reactions based on protecting all of those little pieces. But all of those little pieces, because they're still they're on repeat, we're accidentally remanifesting different aspects of those traumas in our life all the time because these pieces are separate. And we think that if we hold on to it and remember it, then it won't happen to us again. Or, those pieces are continuing to play that out because they're trying to get our attention so that we can bring them home so that we can have
Mm.
wholeness within inside of ourselves. And when we feel that wholeness within inside of ourselves, we can feel the wholeness and the oneness with everyone and everything around us, with the trees, with the flowers, with the birds, with the water, even the inanimate objects. Sometimes I can feel the oneness of like my walls and my phone and my computer in the sense that it really is all stemmed from Creator. It's all energy, in manifest. And
Mm.
so a lot of the alchemy, that we're speaking of is I have the ability to look at you. And if you're having an issue in your life and you're like, my head hurt, I've done cognitive behavioral therapy and not that that's bad because it has a beautiful place. And I know I want these things, but like I keep doing this and making this decision and going back to this relationship or staying over here. And I really don't want to. Why? Well, there's something stuck in your subconscious, your unconscious, your inner child, your chakra, your aura, your cellular memory, your DNA, the midbrain. So it can be stored and it can be stored in your organs. So it could be stored in all these different places. And so my gift is that I could look at you and say, oh, that's your inner child. Something happened to you at 8 years old. Let's go tend to the experience that you had when you were 8. But what I teach clients to do as I'm doing that for them is I start to activate and give them tools and resources and meditations to create their own pathways to be able to tap into those unseen aspects of themselves so they can learn to do that process themselves and recapitulate and bring back those disassociated parts into that unconditional frequency of love. And I also come from teachings that believe that when Father Sky and Mother Earth come together, when the sperm and the egg come together and your heartbeat gets created, that's an individual frequency of unconditional love that is unique to you that nobody else has. And that is your most potent healing that you have been given by a creator that lives within inside of you. And it's practicing being so present with ourselves to tap into that and to believe that. Because when we have trauma, we pull back, we protect, and we build walls. And so we're separate, not only from ourselves, but from the people that we really want to be close to. Every human wants, community. Every human wants to feel accepted and seen and loved. And
Yeah.
when we've had all this trauma, we literally can't allow that to be able to come into our beings, even if we desperately want it. And so it does really take helping tend to those parts and giving them and creating a safe space mentally, emotionally, and physically and spiritually for them to want to come home. So, how are we relating to ourselves? How are we seeing ourselves? How are we talking to ourselves? How are we, you know, um, acknowledging when we have hard things come up. A lot of um, self-help and, strong mind movements, which are really good. It's really good to exercise that mind. But if you have an inner child who's having a reaction and an emotion, and then you just try to put a positive thought over it, it's not going to do much. And then
Mm-mm.
you're going to be in this conflict and this rigor-ram, and then you're going to be frustrated. And we have all this whole thing like we need to be in high vibe feelings and high vibe thoughts. No, we don't, because every single feeling and thought we have is a gift and has a purpose. Anger, sadness, sorrow, grief, strongest teachers you're ever going to have. So
Mm.
it's not that those aren't allowed or that you can't manifest good things or you're not in alignment if you have those feelings. It's what you do with those feelings and emotions and how you use them to empower yourself to be more in alignment with spirit because we all have those emotions. It's a part of the human experience. So it's like anger is
Yeah.
letting you know you need a boundary. Anger is like, oh, I don't like that. So if we didn't get angry, we might not notice that we didn't like it. We might not notice that we need a boundary. And then we might be being taken advantage of or abused and not even realize it. So yeah, you grab that anger and you take a look at it. What is it there to teach you? And then you alchemize it. It's your energy. You can take the anger and give it to a plant, give it to the sun, give it to the water, ask it to transmute it and to bring it back to you as self-love, or bring it back to you as confidence, or bring it back to you as empowerment. Because
Oh,
everything is
that's
emotion.
beautiful.
And that's a really easy tool for people to
Yeah.
start to use. Yeah, it's really good because that's your energy. That's of you. So, and we don't really, pieces of us don't really die, right? They die in rebirth. They transmute. You can take something from one state to the other, but we can't really we can't get rid of our egos. And the one thing I would love to say about the ego is if you approach the ego as just your inner child trying to get its needs met and make friends with it, you will be a much happier person than trying to get rid of that ego. It's there for a reason. It's asking you to love yourself that much more every time it comes up.
Well, absolutely. And just like we don't want to get rid of our emotions, that's a part of the human experiences. It's how you utilize them, right? So, to you said so many incredible things. Oh my goodness. I'm like, oh, we could talk more about this. It's so great. Something, so many things that I loved, but being able to transmute those feelings and energy and give it back to anything that's around it. It's something that maybe wants it. Really simple, easy, off-topic concept of that is if you feel like you have all of this pain and this weight. Oftentimes we gain a lot of weight because that's the trauma stuck within our bodies, right? Because we don't know how to process it yet. And when we start just giving that back to the earth and to the animals that may need a little extra fattening up, right? It's, just in how we look at things and being able to joyfully share that because we all are connected and, we are the energetic beings and everything is energy. And that brings us to that easy concept. Or makes it an easier concept of the oneness because everything is energy and it's all connected. It's kind of like, and I love how they're bringing so much into science, but when you put your finger down on a table, you're not actually touching the table. And people can research that on their own, but it just helps our brains understand things a little easier, right? Another thing that I really enjoyed you bringing up, Xochi, was that it's not it's not your fault, or we accidentally, that was the word that you used, we accidentally keep rehashing everything because our bodies are designed to do so. And I think that's another really important thing to bring up is that it's not our fault because our bodies are just responding the way they are. And so, but once we know that and we have the awareness of, we get to start reprogramming, we get to start uh, diverting the attention and the energy elsewhere, and again going back to that transmuting those energies.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the main things that I do with the inner child. Like this is a really good example. One of my clients she was in a relationship and she kept going back to it and she didn't want to, and it kept making her feel rejected, but she couldn't figure out why she kept going back to it to experience the same negative thing. So I asked her, when was the very first time you ever remember feeling how you feel when you're in this relationship? And she
Mm.
brought up this experience when she was 9 years old, like being at camp and like all the other girls never wanting to play with her and ditching her and rejecting her. So this is one of the first modalities I learned from one of my teachers early on for inner child wounding. It was the most amazing thing I'd ever witnessed. But you create resources, you make sure that they feel safe. You're creating that container of unconditional love. You drop them into a place of self-compassion. And then I asked her to go back into the memory and remembering what she wore, what it smelled like, what the walls looked like, where they were, breathing it all in so that the experience starts to come up again. And she started to describe the rejection. So then what happened is that little 9-year-old got to have the experience that she really wanted back then. Because when she would tell her parents what happened, oh, it's no big deal. You guys are just kids. It doesn't matter. So here she got to hold herself, witness herself. I got to hold her, listen to her. We got to tell that little 9-year-old everything she wanted to hear. And she cried and released and got seen. And then I asked her, how would you have wanted that experience to go? And so she rewrote the experience in her mind and in her body and her energy of going to her parents and them understanding and taking care of her in all the ways. And within like a month, she was all done with that relationship.
Mm. So
And
incredible. When we rewrite the script and our past turns into wisdom,
mhm.
and there's just so much freedom with that. And you bring up such an incredible point of sometimes the reoccurring things that happen in life that we really don't want. And we're like, why does this keep coming up? Why do I keep meeting, certain energies or certain peoples or certain circumstances or environments or whatever it is? And we start going back into experiences that we had, especially as children, because a child's mind, it keeps everything there because it doesn't know otherwise, right? It hasn't fully developed yet, and it's not able to comprehend or think more realistically, or, well, I shouldn't say realistically, but be able to just process those things. Something that would be so silly to us now as adults, right? We're like, well, why would I think of it that way? Or why would I take this personally? But a child is completely different. So when we go back to those uh, instances that happen to us, especially revolving around many people, and that feeling of not being included or loved, like you mentioned earlier before, those are the things that we all want as people. Going back into the delusion of separation, because we're not separate from anything or anyone or source, it is in fact a delusion. And so it's those human pieces of us that trick us, that make us feel that that is what's happening, but because it's not, there's a freedom there when we really have that understanding.
Yeah, and I
Beautiful
love that you
example.
brought that up. Yeah, I love that you brought that up about allowing people to have the perspective of the child. Because when I get people who want to work on their inner child, the first thing they say is, my parents did the best that they could do. And it's like, absolutely. And you were caused a lot of harm. And they don't know how to let those two things live in the same place, right? Because that's something of a more of a, a more higher developed mind. An adult knows how to, if they're emotionally mature and spiritually mature, they've learned how to live in the gray. They can let those two truths live next to each other, but a child doesn't know how. So, they take the adult perspective, like you were saying, well, that's ridiculous for me to feel that way. But it's like, no, not for an 8-year-old. That's actually exactly how an 8-year-old would perceive that, or a 13-year-old would perceive that, or a 16-year-old to perceive that. So that's one of the first things I have to teach a lot of my clients is allow yourself to experience and see it through the perspective of the age you were when the trauma happened, and don't have any judgment around it. And the other tough part that I come across a lot with as kids, grown adults, but they are so let's see, committed to preserving their parents' sense of reality and preserving their parents' ego, that they don't want to admit that their parents have actually caused them harm. And then they don't want to
Mm,
have to process that, because if they break out of the false reality that their parent created while the trauma was happening, so the parent didn't have to face what was going on, they feel like they're betraying their tribe. They're betraying
mm,
their familiar unit with that they want them to love them so much. And that can be a really big hiccup for people, not
yeah,
realizing that they're these sovereign beings. That yes, our parents were the conduits in which birthed us, but we're all, sovereign beings, and we're here to have our own individual expressed journeys, whether our parents support that or not. And we also don't need our parents' approval
yeah.
or apologies to heal either. That's another thing is people, well, my mom's a narcissist, or my dad will never admit that he was wrong. And that absolutely doesn't mean that you cannot heal, even if they can't acknowledge you the way that you want them to now.
Oh, those are incredible things. I would love to highlight this a little bit more because, that's another perspective that many of us don't go to. We refuse to go to in regards to parent. When we put our parents on a pedestal because they're the head of the tribe, they are the essence of who we are. We are a part of, and so we don't want to accept that there was so many issues, that they have their own traumas that are surfacing out that reflect on us. And so also being able to allow that, to let go of that once we understand that, in order to not have their permission to heal ourselves. And breaking free from the people that we're closest to is something incredibly challenging for all of us. And that identity piece, because we identify ourselves with that, with the tribe, with the so many concepts that we have, societal standards, the thicker than blood, all of these things, these little aspects that we consider to be the absolutes, and they're just not. There is more freedom than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so much in our culture, we are taught to hand our authority over to our parents, to the teachers, to the experts, to the doctors, to the government, to the news, to whoever. And that really doesn't give us a strong sense of self. And when we have, given all of our authority to our parents, like you said, when we're little, our parents are God. We innately
Yeah.
trust them, whether regardless of whether or not they're giving us things that are beneficial or healthy for us or not, we just trust it. And those initial relationships with the feminine and the masculine shape, right, how we respond to all of our relationships. And so, and to not look at your parent as just a parent, like you said, like, wait, they're their own individual person that came in with all their own stuff, trying to work out all their own things. Something I've told my kids since they were young is I will disappoint you. I will never meet all of your needs exactly the way that you want me to. I am absolutely human here trying to figure things out day by day, just like you, and we could do this together.
Yeah.
And because I didn't want them to have this unrealistic expectation that I had of my parents, thinking that they were supposed to be, provide all these things that like they weren't provided. So how, it was very difficult for them to figure out how to provide that, for me. And that does really help. Like, so it's interesting because you have to take things from that child perspective. And then as you work with that, then it's also taking it from the adult perspective. And, you're reparenting, right? You're raising those little parts of yourself to be able to merge and bring back their innocence prior to the trauma happening, and then blending that with your wisdom and discernment as an adult so that you can feel that oneness and not be afraid of the world because you're safe and you know how to take care of yourself
Mm.
and you have a voice and you have boundaries that you didn't have when you were a child. So that feeling of oneness and the essence of our innocence of who we are and what we really came here to do gets really clouded because we weren't protected. So as we reparent those inner children, then our adult selves can protect them. And now we can have this beautiful exchange, with those pure energies that felt like they got lost.
It makes you wonder, Xochi, do we ever fully grow up? I mean, because we're always, there's always something to work on, but that's the beautiful part of life. It's the evolution that never stops. There's always this more heightened, wonderful aspect of who we are. And so what a wonderful thing to
Yeah.
consider.
Yeah. If we keep staying in the gift of it, right? Because some days it's like, oh my gosh, there's more. Like my 9-year old's still upset about this. Like, okay,
Right?
I mean, or
It's a
but
good
then when
thing to
when you're present and you see the gift in it, it's always worth it, of course. But
absolutely. And to notate that things will always resurface. Our brains harbor so much in the unconscious mind, and there are things that will remind us. There are smells, there are scenes, there are music, so many things that will bring us back to a moment that we're like, my gosh, how did that resurface? I haven't thought of that in decades. So it's always a constant work in progress. But I think that when a big message is when we can look at things in a curious way, and it's a lot easier to be able to process. So Xochi, you have been an incredible guest on the Wellness Driven Life Show. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I want to make sure that everyone knows where to find you. So, for those of you watching, we've had it displayed here on the screen throughout the show. For those of you listening in, the insightfulpath.com, the insightfulpath.com, easy peasy. That's going to be in the description below. Check out her site. Check out what she does. If you've listened thus far, you know how incredibly wise she is and all the spiritual pieces. And she's walked us through a little bit about how she guides clients and giving you all the tools and resources that you need on your personal journey. So that said, Xochi, thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience today?
Just to attempt to be as present as you possibly can with yourself when things come up from the past, or even when things come up in our present moment. It's a really intense time right now in life for a lot of people. I always tell people, like, just be present with that aspect of yourself like you would with a tree, without any criticism. Like when we sit with the tree, we're not thinking the bark needs to be different, or the leaves need to look different, or that branch would look better over here, right? Like we can just be with the beauty and the presence of that tree. And often, when we're working on ourselves and we want to get well, we can get really stuck in like, I need to change, I need to change, I need to change. And the more present you are, the slower you can be with yourself with that lens of compassion. Those aspects kind of already know how to go home. They're waiting to go home. So sometimes on this journey of less is actually more. And if we could focus on being more present and loving and trusting that unconditional love frequency will guide our parts home, rather than always having to do something in the mental mind, or to feel like we have to, take steps and like do rituals. And there's definitely a place for that in alchemy. But another part of alchemy is really practicing being fully present with yourself without judging it, and not really desiring it to be different, and then allowing it to organically go back to the state that it already is.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast.
Exactly.
I love
you
it.
got it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's truly an absolute pleasure. I knew we would have a great conversation. And so thank you for being our guest on the show.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I feel very grateful. It was a wonderful, beautiful conversation, and grateful to meet you.
And thank you to our audience, because without you, the show wouldn't be possible. So goodbye for now, and we will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
This mask will provide me a safe place to hide.